Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, ISKCON's founder, BBT founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Radharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Jai, Shri Radha Gopi Janavallabha, ISKCON Farmington Hills, Yatra Dham Ki Jai, for all glories to Krishna, all glories to Krishna, Gaur Premanandi. Prabhupada, like he was leaving 1967 to return to India, he comforted devotees saying that if you are chanting Hare Krishna over here, and I'm chanting Hare Krishna over there, we will all packed up together. So this is within that same thought process. It's the first time I've ever been here in my life, and very nice to see such a beautiful manifestation of Krishna consciousness. The lordships Sri Radha, Kunja Bihari, Gopi Janavallabha, Radha Shri Radha, Gopi Janavallabha. Kunja Bihari is the original temple. So, so we were asked to speak on the Bhagavatam, which is Lord Raha explaining to Hiranyaksha that, okay, let's fight, let's go, if you like, and say something about the anniversary of the deities and deity worship in general, and how that relates to chanting the holy name. So that's a pretty ambitious thing, so we'll try our best. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 10, 18. The battle between Lord Bor and Hiranyaksha, verse number 12. From Patanam Kila Utapadipo Katasva No Swastaya Asu Anuha Samstapya
Chasman
Pramjashru
Swakanam
Swam Patignam Nati Pitparti Asabya Advatanam Kila Utapadipo Katasvano Swastaya As Anuha Samstapya Chasman Pramajashu Svakanam
Samstapya Chasman Pramajashu Svakanam
Nam Nati Parti Asabya
Yaswam Pradipyam Nati Pipati Asabya
Sampadvatanam Kila Utapadipo
Sampadvatanam Kila Utapadipo
Katasvano Swastaya As Anuha
Katasvano Swastaya
Samstapya Chasman Pratijashu Svahanam
Samstapya Chasman Pramajashu Svakanam
Nam Nati Piparti Asabya
Yaswam Pradipyam Nati Pipati Asabya
Padvatanam Kila Yutapadipa Tasvano Swastaya Asmanuha Stapya Chasman Pramijashu Svakanam Yasvam Patiknam Nati Parti Asabya Hare Krishna. Who's here?
Padvatanam Kili, the Padipo, Asvano Swas, Ashvanu Vaha, Stapya Chasman, Brahmajashu Sukhanam, Swam Yam
Yaswam Pratignyam Nati Vipatti Asabhyaha. Vampadanam Kilayutapadipo Gadasvano Swasthaya Samstapyatasman Brahmajashu Yaswam Pratignyam Nati Vipatti Asabhyaha.
From you, Padavatanam, foot soldiers, Kila, indeed, Utapa, the leaders, Adipa, the commanders, Patasva, take steps, Na, our, Asvatsi, Avastaye, for defeat, Ashu, promptly, Anuha, without consideration, Samstapya, having killed, Cha, and Asman, us. From Rija, wipe away. Ashu, tears. Svakanam, your kith and kin. He who, Swam, his own. Pratignyam, promised word. Not. Atipati, fulfills. Asabhya, not fit to sit in an assembly. Once again, this is Krishna as Lord Varaha speaking to the demon Hiranyakshi. Translation. You are supposed to be the commander of many foot soldiers, and now you may take prompt steps to overthrow us. Capital U, us. Give up all your foolish talk and wipe out the cares of your kith and kin by slaying us. One may be proud, yet he does not deserve a seat in an assembly if he fails to fulfill his promised word. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. A demon may be a great soldier and commander of a large number of infantry, but in the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is powerless and destined to die. The Lord therefore challenged the demon not to go away, but to fulfill his promised word to kill him. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Davarakamanam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagadatam Saganam Bhagavatam Sadvaitam Savadam Pravidana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pradhan Sadhana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Surto Bangur Mama Manda Matergati Matsar Vaspa Padambo Jo Radha Madana Bhota Vivitandaranya Kalpachumada Srimad Ratnakara Singasanasto Srimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prasnalabi Savyamano Smarami Srimad Rasa Rasarambi Bamsi Patatastaha Karshan Venu Smanargo Bir Gopi Nasa Shriye Stuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindamani Shri Vishamanu Sute Devi Hanamami Hari Kriye Panchakalpa Julius Job Job Titanam Bhavnavyo Vaishnavyo Jai Shri Krishna Nanya Nanda Shri Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. It's like in the dentist office. Vanchakalpa Juvyas Chakra Pasandubhya Chakra. So, of course, this is the Lord's play, the cursing of Jai and Vijay. Prabhupada has said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has all the sentiments and feelings that we do. And sometimes we want to have a good fight. So who could give a good fight to the Supreme Personality of Godhead? It has to be his own personal men, devotees from his own staff, because the ordinary demons of this world, they're vanquished automatically by the laws of nature and Krishna's designated agents to take care of this material cosmic manifestation. Material world, Prabhupada says in one place, it's a place for, it says kind of humorously, supplying plain cradles to naughty boys. Maybe they would make a joke like that. Whoever dies with the most toys at the end of their life wins the game. So, so when the Lord's devotees take the role of demons, then quite the demons that they are. Hiranyaraksha is about to be killed, and that will anger his very dear twin brother, Hiranyakashipu, who the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev, such an unprecedented appearance, Adbhuta Shringam, never before seen wonderful form of the Lord. And that form of the Lord is to be prayed to and thought of by all devotees in this material world for their protection. And indeed, again in 1967, Srila Prabhupada instituted and taught the devotees the prayers to Lord Nrsingadev, and in particular to protect him and his mission. My dear Lord Nrsingadev, my dear Lord Krishna, please protect our spiritual master. He has not yet finished his work. And Prabhupada even attested later that your prayers, they saved me. Interesting in that regard that Prabhupada revealed at one point, quite some time later, that Krishna was calling me back home, back to Godhead, and I was appealing to him, I've not yet completed my mission, I have to stay. And amazing, Prabhupada revealed that Krishna said, all right, stay and do your nonsense. As if Srila Prabhupada's activities for the next 10 years, 1967 and 1977, were nonsense. Here, Hiranyaksha is, Lord Varaha is baiting Hiranyaksha. He's saying that you've spoken all these big boastful words, you're going to slay me. So go ahead. One is not fit to sit in
in proper assembly unless he fulfills his word. So, Paritranaya sadhunam, vinashaya traduskritam. Now, Krishna, he doesn't so much come to slay the demons, but he comes to give pleasure. Pralada Lada Dayane, Pralada Nandan Nishayade. He gives pleasure to Prahlad, and taking care of the demon Hiranyakashipu is secondary. Prabhupada says in one of his purports that for the devotees seriously and actually engaged in this Krishna consciousness movement, there is no question of uncertainty. The demigods were so perturbed by Hiranyakashipu's austerities, choking the universal breathing process. Similarly, Dhruva, of course, very well motivated. The demigods, they didn't know what was going on. They're Sakama devotees. They can't satisfy the Lord fully, and therefore the knowledge of what's going on will not be imparted to them to the extent that the knowledge is revealed in total to the Lord's pure devotees. Just like Prahlad Maharaj was never afraid of all the atrocities and chastisements of Hiranyakashipu. And indeed, when asked to take a benediction from the Lord, he simply, of course, for asking to be continuously engaged in the service of his spiritual master, Narada Muni. If I have to take a benediction, you can bless my father. And it was automatically done for the pure devotee. 14 generations of their forefathers are liberated. So for the devotees engaged in this Krishna consciousness movement, there is no question of uncertainty. And in this regard, the devotees are confident that any amount of demoniac activity cannot supersede the Lord or defeat his mission and his purpose. We just celebrated Ram Nomi, and it's described there in one purport how Ravana and his soldiers were equipped with all the weapons of modern warfare, whereas the monkeys recruited in the jungle only threw stones and tree trunks and other naturally. It was only Lord Ramachandra and Lakshman who shot some arrows. But because Ravana was condemned by the curse of Mother Sita, the supreme internal potency of the Lord, the goddess of fortune, his ruination and doom was assured. Srila Prabhupada said, the number one demons in this modern age are the scientists who are proposing that life comes from matter. There's even one personality, he's like the aide to this Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. He's saying things like, human beings will no longer have free will. They will be hackable like computer animals, and we will program them. Such insane nonsense. So we can rest assured that such an agenda and such an idea will be destroyed and doomed to failure. Prabhupada said, you go on with your activities of propagating the Krishna consciousness movement, it will be done. Just like Arjuna was guaranteed by Krishna, they're already put to death by my will. You simply become an instrument in the fight. I want you to get the credit. Yadubara and Vishaka Prabhus were extensively filming Prabhupada in Los Angeles, his June 1975 visit. And there's a room darshan, and there's a very, wonderstruck Vishnu Jan Swami saying, sure, Prabhupada, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said that something that he could spread this movement very quickly. Why didn't he do it? That is, and Prabhupada just didn't let him get the whole thought out. That was his Bhaktivinoda Thakur's mercy that he left some service for you to do, for us to do. He is Vaishnava. He can finish immediately if he likes. So this Krishna consciousness movement, the Sankirtan Leela of Lord Chaitanya, is the continuation right here today. This present Krishna consciousness movement, even Lord Chaitanya said, this Sankirtan movement, this one right here that we're in, not over there, not in the book, if we have books in the temple room, not just, on our machines, we're looking unpaid political announcement, excuse me. This Sankirtan movement is fully equipped. At the end of the chapter, Pradyumna Mishra, instructed by Ramananda Roy, Anta chapter 6, where Kaviraj Goswami is describing how Lord Chaitanya likes to illustrate how his devotees in seemingly not so favorable or fortunate births or castes and orders of life become the highest proponents of the knowledge of Sambandha, Abhideya, and ultimately Prayojan Tattva Gyan. Haridas Thakur, who Prabhupada said was pleased, not that he was forced, he was pleased to accept his birth in a Mohammedan family, became the dean, Prabhupada says in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, like the dean of the college, the dean or authority of the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the holy name. Ramananda Roy was considered by external caste, even though he's the governor of Madras in the Sutra position. He is instructing Pradyumna Mishra, a high-class Brahmin, and certainly and previously, when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya came to his senses and was converted by Lord Chaitanya, he remembered Ramananda Roy and his position, and now can understand his exalted position, and advised Lord Chaitanya to seek him out and meet him without fail on his tour of South India. And when they did meet, they were embracing in most unprecedented ecstasies, and Lord Chaitanya as Radha and Krishna combined, and Ramananda Roy as Vishakadev. And Prabhupada writes, certainly there was awakening of love when they embraced each other, but the ritualistic Brahmins who were attending Ramananda Roy were like amazed. How is it that this governor, Ramananda Roy, embracing this sannyasi, are becoming restless like madmen? So understanding that they restrained their activities and came to, so to speak, normal. So the Lord knows very well to defeat the pride of the caste Brahmins. He illustrates, and Rupa and Sanatan, who were practically converted to Muslims, he made them the Rasacharyas. They were chief disciples to reveal. Lord Chaitanya, widely renowned as a scholar in his youth, left only 8 verses, the Shashastra, which contain everything. But he left the task of delineating the topmost Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy to his disciples, a task that his disciples to the present day are carrying out. So just like an artist, he sets up an easel and paints his masterpiece and considers it his personal profit. So in that way, he has the lives of his devotees. And then similarly, Prabhupada has revealed and he affirmed that, of course, we don't take it like that. Bhavananda Prabhu, it was Prabhupada said to him in his presence that it was in the Mayapur festival, 1974 or 75, that Lord Chaitanya and my spiritual master have arranged for all, previously you were all born in India, and he sent you to take your birth in the Western countries, and you would be there when I would come, and you would immediately come forward and you would assist me. And Bhavananda Prabhu, who was part of Andy Warhol's group, which was quite an interesting group of personalities, said, but Srila Prabhupada, how is that possible? We were engaged in all abominable activities, and Prabhupada just waved it off and said, that was all circumstantial. When you heard me chant the holy name, you all came running. So, Srila Prabhupada's extraordinary work on behalf of his spiritual master and Lord Chaitanya, up to the time of his departure, there was, at the end of Yadubhar and Vishaka's movie, there's the credits, and there's to date 1977, 108 temples, so many books and so many languages. And then the current statistic, which was 2017, what to speak of now, 5 years later, it was something like 850 temples and so many devotees and so many books distributed, and the number of languages is just simply exponential. So we should have very deep faith and realization that will come by doing our level best in accord with our position in the phalanx of this Sankirtan army uh, to work very hard to spread this movement. And all realization and all encouragement and all knowledge will be there. Of this, there is no doubt. So, in Radhakund in 1935, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, we know the story, was upset, and even the word Srila Prabhupada used was disgusted that his leading disciples were fighting over the property and prestige of this movement, and even thinking that we have done enough preaching and now we can just kind of sit back and kick back. And the instruction was given that if I could take the marble from this big Bagh Bazar temple in Calcutta and print books, that would be better. If you ever get money, print books. And Srila Prabhupada, he put great emphasis on printing books, writing books, and so urgent it was. They chose very nicely in the movie Hare Krishna, the mantra, the movement, and the Swami who started it all, that Prabhupada is saying that when I completed the 3rd volume of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the inception, it thinks I have to write 60 volumes, all 12 cantos. So when the 3rd part of the 1st canto was published, then Guru Maharaj gave indication, now you go to America. So with these 3 printed volumes, and by American standards, Prabhupada was writing that even though improperly composed or written, they were heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who were thoroughly honest. No money, no backing, and even his lead godbrother, who was the legal in charge of the Gaudiya Math organization, told him that you can't go to America without any backing, and he even made this amazing statement that, and people don't come to meetings anymore. Everything is done by television. So ignoring all that, Prabhupada came, and with full faith in the order of his spiritual master, and everything came about. So then later, incorporating ISKCON in July of 1966 in New York City, it became clear the need for temples. Prabhupada said that relating to Rupa and Sanatan, they weren't eager to build temples, but when rich men approached them, they engaged their money in making costly temples, Madan Mohan, Govindaji Temple. And Srila Prabhupada, especially here in the United States and in Europe, when devotees came forward and money started coming, he left the management of the temples here to his Western disciples, checking them if there was extravagant overspending, this and that. But he was more minutely involved in the projects in India. And in later years, Srila Prabhupada would come to the West for a once-a-year visit, touring like main temples. So the temples were places meant to give shelter to serious aspirants. It's a place where hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord takes place, and there can be sadhu sangha, there can be association amongst devotees, and we can give up the association of the non-devotees and give up the association of the material world. So Prabhupada, his vision that there can be temples everywhere. In New York City, he said there can be a temple on every street corner or in all of the different neighborhoods. So just like this is Farmington Hills, it is its own municipality and jurisdiction within the greater Detroit area. So the need and desire was there, and the Lord reciprocated with that sincerity and has appeared as Radha Gopijana Vallabha. And this is their 5-year anniversary of their appearance and installation. And this is a very, very wonderful occasion. Maybe we could ask Maladeep Prabhu to say a little something of as you feel inspired, you were present for some of the most amazing callings of the Lord to appear by Srila Prabhupada as early as in the Frederick Street Temple, Lord Jagannath. One note on that you all became very enthusiastic and took Lord Jagannath out to Golden Gate Park for a chanting session at Hippie Hill. And Prabhupada went along with it, and you see that picture of Prabhupada chanting next to Lord Jagannath with a microphone put in front of him and a Fender amplifier behind him, and a bunch of hippies chanting and dancing. But later Prabhupada instructed that the deity remains in the temple. Of course, Lord Jagannath will come out once a year. But for Rath Yatra.
And it does not come out in Rome. It's always
So the deity of the holy name comes out all the time. And it's very important that we understand the deity in the temple and the holy name are non-different in every way. And just like we don't want to neglect the deity worship, I was noticing how dutiful and how determined all the pujaris were in making sure everything is done very nicely. So that same adherence and concern and even anxiety that the deity of the holy name is not neglected, but worshiped properly should be there also. So thinking you were present for Radha Landanishvar, Radha Gokulananda. I like how you were made the collector for Radha Gokulananda, is your memoirs on one of those videos that we would go and collect in the pubs. And because it was so raucous in there, we'd say, we're collecting for the little blue boy in the manor. And all the drunk people would be invited. It's a microphone.
but actually,
Quick. She can hold the mic. Good enough cord?
as you were mentioning, today is the beginning of the Kirtan, isn't it? So our first elongated Kirtan. It was on the occasion, and it wasn't a joyful occasion, Sri Prabhupada was not well. So yes, of course, there was only two centers, New York and San Francisco. Both of them could have fit into this space, very small places. We always say the temple was packed, yeah, because they were pretty small, so it was easy to pack the temple, but nonetheless. So we went in, with this that we just started. There wasn't a plan, there was not an anivas, there was not all the hyperbole that surrounds having a kirtan nowadays. Sat down and started chanting. And there was one point in the chanting where there was some kind of collective feeling, some energy occurred. And we noticed that. And then later, Prabhupada, he sent a letter to everybody in San Francisco. He gave his even names, like your boys and girls. So, but he indicated if it wasn't for this chanting, he did not think he would survive. He would have survived. And that indication was that moment, which nobody was looking at a clock, nobody had watches in those days, and we had clocks on the wall. But that moment when we just felt something happen, which we couldn't explain, was the moment when Krishna was answering our prayers, the same Srila Prabhupada. So he thanked us for that. And so far, as we will be observing the deity installations. I think it was actually Thursday, the 21st. Actually, but you should have probably instructed. So it's later on, like with London Ishvara. So we should keep a book, a journal for the deities. So it's not too late to start that here. And you keep note of significant events, like the day they arrived, and other significant events. And we should keep photos also. The only temple I know that actually has done this is Chicago. But this, like, sometimes we keep a diary. Not maybe every day you write something there, but I have significance. Like when Prabhupada came over in the Jaladuta, there's the Jaladuta diaries. It's not pages and pages of stuff, but there's limitations. So in the same way, the history of the deities is maintained. And maybe kind of curious note, when Lord Jagannath was installed, so it was in March of 1967, so the first deities to be worshipped in his son. There were no Brahmins. Nobody had second initiation. We didn't even know about it. There was no Gilas. If you had said where's the Gila, we wouldn't have known what you were talking about. Prabhupada told us to get a large plate and put candles. And that plate was passed around to everybody who was present, and so to wave it in front of the people. And there was a lot of incense. We were very fixated on incense in those days, so it was always just like cloud of incense in the air. I remember during that kirtan, which was the main, and he was bathed by kirtan. It was the main feature. And I remember Janaki Devi Dasi, who was the first initiated lady disciple, she and her husband, Mukunda, were part of the first initiation that occurred in 1966 on Janmashtami. First initiation, second initiation was on Radhastami. She was standing, everybody was up. There's actually a little clip of this somewhere on the internet. But I was kind of looking, the room definitely was packed and everybody was on their feet chanting. We had been going out telling people, come to our temple on this day. You want to see God? Come to our temple. God is coming to our temple and you can see him. So we definitely had a large turnout. And we used to go out, we would tell people, you want to see God? Just come to our temple. He said, you can see him. So on this day, we first appeared, I saw Janaki just had tears coming down her eyes. So I was wondering, but you couldn't speak over the tear. It was like coming out of your heart, coming out of your mouth. But she was just, he's there, he's really there. And that was a fact, he was really there. Lord Jagannath was accepting our call, our cry to please come and let us serve you. Even though we were clueless about the intricacies of the service, even though we weren't even Brahmins, I don't even know if any of us are Brahmins yet, but okay, even any of us read the mantras, we do our best. And Lord Jagannath is so merciful that he accepts our service, our offerings. And that was the beginning of the, as informal as it was the beginning of the formalization of how we make our offerings now the both offerings. Again, for a while, the artis were very simple, with some candles and incense. Before that time, the offerings were done, we offered, but we brought all the pots and pans into the center of the temple, and everybody on each side. We just ring a bell and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, and on. And there wasn't a set number of times, we just chanted until we felt like, okay. But when Lord Jagannath came, Prabhupada said, now everything you prepare has to be offered to him. And he told me, you get a plate. And he might have told me that before, right before, because we had it. So we said, you have to get a plate. And then he said, a plate, 2 bowls, and a goblet, and a spoon. That was, then he said, preferably silver. And then he paused and he said, a plate that no one has eaten off of before. Like we celebrated Earth Day yesterday. We talked a lot about recycling. Let me tell you, these were the original recyclers. We just, like, took anything from anywhere and used it. So even in Prabhupada, we didn't call it a Vyasa sign, we didn't know that word yet. We called it the dais. It was a raised platform which Sundar had made. And then somebody looked and said, yeah, there should be a cushion. And he remembered seeing a discarded sofa somewhere on the street. He ran out and came back with the cushion from the sofa that was on the street. Lord knows what went on in that cushion. That Prabhupada purified it. So by the next year, this was 77, so by 68 in the summer in Montreal, we started meeting dietary. And we flew from San Francisco to Montreal, we meeting the 6 of us and my daughters and 7 of us. And actually it was 8 because Wendy Walker also came with us and actually 9. So so we arrived in Montreal on our way to the UK. And upon arriving, I remember Neelamati coming up to me saying, you're going to get a second initiation, which we hadn't heard about. And I said, what does that mean? What does that mean? And she goes, more mantras to chant. And I was not at all thrilled because, having a new baby, 6 weeks old, getting ready to leave the country for an indeterminate amount of time, with a one-way ticket, just getting those 16 rounds done was a supreme challenge, which I'll be honest, wasn't always accomplished. So, but there is a picture of that where we're all there. And Wendy Walker became Rukmini. Das, and when you know Rukmini, wife of Nitya. And from there we went on. We celebrated his Janmashtami and then Shivapad Vyasaput, and then that. But the deity worship was very simple, but there was points that were made even then, which was punctuality and cleanliness. And keep that in mind. And generally, we don't want to look around for faults. That's, devotees shouldn't be fault finders. At the same time, in terms of serving Krishna in his temple, we should keep a sharp eye out. And if you see something's amiss, don't wait for someone else to do it, just take care of it. If you can, or if you can't, then thank you is responsible. Okay, so I'm going to just mention something just by way of an example. But like I was up in the front there, so between the gate and the marble of the altar, there's a little space. That little space really needs to be cleaned up. There's all kinds of little debris in there, old flowers and stuff. So this is the kind of thing. Prabhupada had such a sharp eye. He could notice these things because he was seeing everything is there for Krishna, it's for Krishna. And this cleanliness is a big part of Krishna's presence. And it was a different kind of cleanliness than we were ever used to before. You could see things that, you pointed out to us, and because we're so covered, it took us a while to even connect and compute. Just like in the kitchen too, when you cook, and the bottom of the pot gets a little tarnished, gets a little black. In the wok, the big wok karai gets all the ghee, I hope it's not oil, but whatever, it gets over the side and it burns up. And we just think that's normal when it's black on the bottom. No. Prabhupada wanted shiny pots, shiny pots, you're looking for a person, he's clean. He uses the word revolutionary, clean. And that wasn't just for the Pujari or for the temple clean, it was for all of us. We all felt responsible to maintain that standard. Everybody who comes in here, your deity worship begins when you enter the temple and you bow down, you clap during kirtan. But this is Prabhupada, it's a part of the deity worship also. And cleaning the temple, so many places. Cleaning the temple is like cleaning your heart. We say it, but really we have to live it. And when you start living it, you start connecting to Krishna more and more. And I think everything here is really wonderful. It's going on wonderfully in spite of, the challenges of the last 2.5, 3 years. Representative Bhagavatam has remained consistently they are our ever well wishers. It was a wonderful opportunity today to chant. This chanting, this kirtans are not about music. They're not about style. They're about the heart calling out for Krishna. And I'd like to order you actually, everybody to get on your little device, Google, Srila Prabhupada vintage kirtans, and meditate, listen to these kirtans by Srila Prabhupada, and meditate on the depth. The quality of the kirtan is in the depth. So we're not musicians. The instruments are just there to add to the kirtan. Sometimes you say enhance the kirtan. But the kirtan is about the holy name. And when Prabhupada would be chanting, you would definitely be transported, because that was just Prabhupada and the holy name, which is nothing different from Krishna. We like to say, when you chant, Krishna's dancing on your tongue, but how many of us actually can, say, well, Krishna's dancing on my tongue? We don't even know what it feels like, but we should be desperate for that feeling. So desperate that we just chant like anything. So we're very have the good fortune to have Ram Roy Prabhu here, who is someone who has a taste for chanting the holy name. And it's not like he was always giving encouragement. Sometimes we feel like we're discouraged or something, or we're not getting the encouragement we need. Well, I'll tell you, he wasn't always encouraged. Sometimes he was given discouragement, but his connection with the holy name didn't waver. So we can take that lesson from him. Don't become discouraged, because frankly, discouragement is a gift from Maya, and we don't need that gift. Hare Krishna. It would be good if we could be given, what is the schedule? Is it printed anywhere? I tried online and I couldn't find it.
We have people from 9:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m.
He's asking the schedule.
Yeah, like we'd like to know a little more, what's going on and when, and those, I would see you probably invite people to chant. I mean, Ron Roy, of course, he could take us through the whole day. So we might want to break, and we might want to know, those, oh, we found some, well, how do we find that? It's on your phone, but it's not on mine. And we don't know where to find it.
No,
They share it in the group.
yeah, just.
Share it. I also take it on.
My group, the latest, he has it, he just share it like this.
Yeah, do you want to give one of the shadows or this and that?
Yes.
It should be on the kirtan also.
She's there, she's there.
Is it? Thank you. I don't have glasses on, so I can't actually see. I'm moving it, but I don't see it. Anyways, we are really looking forward to this wonderful day, and I think Krishna is too, because he kicked out the clouds and he's turning up the heat.
80 degrees today.
Almost every year we are getting to that.
Yeah. This year 80 degrees means it's more than 100.
But can you tell us, like, get it printed out, like,
Yeah, it will be posted on the wall.
when Prashadam is, or anything else that we should know?
He will post the schedule on the wall. Actually, he will post it in the Vaishnava Sangha and Vaishnavi Sangha, that way, you'll get to know the schedule, and as usual, 12:30 RP and 1 o'clock. Just Kirtan actually, 9:30 to 9:30 Kirtan. Only thing you need to know is who is singing at what time, that's it. So we put even our Vandasundari Madhadev also for singing, and Pradhan Payas your name is already there. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. But we thought, we'll let you know in the morning, so that's the reason why. Let me tell you, if you post the schedule, it has some technical administrative difficulties. That's why we did not post. So, but can you do it now?
Yes, we do it.
Okay, it's doing right now. You all get the schedule on your phones.
Yeah, I'm not from the group, but everybody is from the group.
I was going to talk to you right after.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
also, there's
exactly.
people who aren't on that group, like, I was just trying to find today, so it needs to be like public access.
Post on the
That
wall.
was right.
Well, even for it online, for people who want,
I mean, Ramra was informed, and the main things, but anyway, we'll post it. Actually, Kirtan is today 9:30 to tonight 9:30, and tomorrow 9:30 to 1 it will continue. Because Sunday Kirtan is actually 12 to 1. No, but tomorrow, because we have Pushpabhishek, we are ending at 12:50. It's 12:50 to 1:30 is your class, and then Pushpabhishek.
what time is the class?
12:50, 12:45 to 1:30.
Okay.
So because of
Yeah,
the
I just wanted to know
right.
the time.
So we brought the class forward so that there can be a Abhishek. So that's it. I request everyone to take prasad, but because we announced 9:30 Kirtan will start. And Project, who is the first one singing? Shivanjana is singing, so we can start in 2 minutes.
But those who want to take the shot, if you served up.
Prasad is served upstairs. I request everyone to please take prasad and come back for the Kirtan. As Madhav said, very important thing is the holy name.